Hi, welcome to ECE 37. I'm Dr. Laurie Daly, and this is Module 7 that we're videotaping today for our internet class. I want to tell you that this is the textbook that we're now talking about. We've moved from the mentor text into the 3 R's of leadership, and hopefully you have your textbook. Today's module is on chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 is a pretty short chapter. It's only a few pages. I'm going to slide that over for you. Whenever you want to grab your textbook, you can. Thank you for letting me use it. So since chapter 1 is only about 3 pages, it made sense to put chapters 1 and 2 together. And I really like this textbook. I hope you're enjoying it too. All right, let me turn on my iPad, wake it up. And so the beginning of this book is the introduction. Chapter 1 is the introduction. And the idea is that there are 3 R's. We all know the reading and writing and arithmetic, none of which begin, well, reading does, but arithmetic and writing don't begin with the letter R. So where that came from, I don't know. But the idea is there are 3 very important parts of administration and leadership. And the 3 R's in this textbook are relationship, reciprocal learning. Another word for reciprocal is reciprocity, meaning give and take. I think we all know what relationships mean. Most of my students by now know the word reciprocity because I use it quite often. It's bi-directional. I impact you, you impact me. It's not a one-way thing. And then reflection. So the 3 R's in this textbook: relationship, reciprocal learning, and reflection. So when educators enter into relationship with each other, we engage in reciprocal learning. So the idea is we enter into a relationship, get it, and we have reciprocal learning. Just like your friends. If you have a good friend, you have a relationship, a friendship, and there's a give and take. Otherwise, it's not a fun relationship. If it's all one person telling you what to do, it's not fun. That's not a relationship. That's a domination. And then the next piece of this is that we reflect on our practices. Any class I teach, I spend time on reflection. We're the reflective educator. That's who we are and what we do. But it also comes into administration in our practice. I should point out that the reciprocal learning for us as administrators goes with we have reciprocity with the staff and teachers and aides and anybody who works for us, but we should also have reciprocity with the parents. There should even be reciprocity with the students, the children that are in our care, and our colleagues, the people we study with and learn with and that we interact with on an academic level. So let's see, what do I want to say? The 3 R's. This is the heart of leadership thinking, the evolution of leadership and leadership actions. I'm going to talk a little bit about where leadership started and what we used to think of it, but for right now I have to come back to the 3 R's. Anybody who's had my ECE 33 class knows that I talk about 3 R's and I have 3 different R's. ECE 33 is the infant toddler course that I teach here at the Clear Lake campus. Love that class. Actually, I also teach it as an internet course too. It's one of my favorites. And they have 3 different R's. Their R's are, let me think here, respect, which I think we could slip into our R's here too and make that part of reciprocity and relationship, because if you truly are in a reciprocal relationship, there should be respect at the heart of it. Reciprocity, hey, that R word slips into that textbook as well. And responsiveness, because when you're working with infants and toddlers, you need to respond to their needs and be open to whatever it is that they need you to do. We call it the platinum rule. We've all heard of the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But in ECE 33, we talk about the platinum rule, meaning do unto others as they need you to do unto them. So you're responding to the needs of the infants and the toddlers in your care. I think this lines up a bit with the 3 R's of this textbook. And then West Ed, which is a wonderful organization. If you're not familiar with West Ed, I hope you check it out. Matter of fact, I will make a link in at the bottom of Module 7. Yes, we're on Module 7. At the bottom of Module 7, where I have video links, I'll make a link to West Ed. Check them out. They are an organization of excellence, and I've just found everything I've learned from them to be on the money. It's research-based and academic, and yet really approachable and user-friendly. So West Ed has 3 different R's. So we get this idea of the 3 R's coming at us in all these different directions, but I think it works well too. And the 3 R's from West Ed is that it's relationship, responsiveness, and respect. So you can see we're all kind of circling around the same R's. And maybe we should just make it 5 R's and say respect, responsiveness, relationship, reciprocity, and let's see, what did I miss? Reflection, thank you. We need to add that into the 3 R's of ECE 33, I think, because the reflective educator is a pretty important concept. Thanks, I appreciate that. Okay, so let's define leadership. It's always a good idea to start at the beginning. And, you know, the common definition is one who leads. Pretty straightforward and simple, not a lot going on. That's an old paradigm. That's so simple, and it's an old paradigm, meaning the leader had to be in a position of leading. So if you weren't a manager, supervisor, someone above, then you didn't have a leadership role. So the new paradigm is that leaders are teachers, administrators, parents, facilitators, educators, university, college professors, why not? And students. Why not, right? You are leaders too. You are. And I have to just say, forgive me, if my classes are starting to blend together. I'm in the same room a lot, 5 days a week or 4 days a week, and I do double duty on one day. And that's a lot of lecturing at the back cabinets there that you can't see on camera. So after a while, it's like, did I say that in this class or the other class? I don't remember. It all is blending together. It gets worse as the semester goes on. But I think I shared this in a different class, but if I did share it on this internet class, forgive me. You are the leaders. You, all of you. And I know that that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable for some people. Matter of fact, it was another class, and I remember, because she's not in the room with us right now, so it had to have been a different class. I asked at one point, who's comfortable being a leader? And my class was like, ugh. I don't know. There were a few people who said, okay, I can do that. I get it. I'm the boss, the administrator, I'll lead. But for the most part, it's a big title, and nobody really wants to take it. And it can be overwhelming because there's this idea that you have to have this strong vision and it has to be done with perfection. And so there's one student of mine said, I'm not a leader. And I kind of stopped and I thought, no, you are a leader. I remember last semester in a different class, you shared a story of your own life. And it was a profound story of how you had overcome in a situation of adversity. And I know for a fact that another student came to me after that class and said, wow, that story was amazing and it touched me. And I really need to think about this. And so I told my student at the time, maybe you didn't know that, and I don't know if I told you this, but the story, just simply sharing the story in class like you did last semester, had a profound impact on someone's life. And so I think the better definition for leadership is that thinking and actions that promote meaningful learning. Anytime we have thinking or actions that promote meaningful learning, you're a leader. So did this student who shared her story provoke meaningful learning to another student? Yep. And so I also realized that I should think about thinking and actions. Thinking meaning paradigms and discourse. And I'm going to go ahead and define this again because I use those terms a lot. And I don't remember if I defined it on camera or not. So a paradigm is it's a pattern or a model of our thinking. It's a set of assumptions and values and concepts and practices that constitute a way of viewing reality. And usually it means that there's a community that shares those paradigms Like in ECE, we have a lot of paradigms that we share. We don't agree on everything, but we do have a lot of paradigms that we share. If I just mention Bowlby's attachment theory, I can just tell you, everybody's like, yeah, we believe in attachment theory. We believe that those bonds that we have as a young infant are important and foundational throughout our life. So it's a paradigm that we in the ECE community hold true, that attachment theory is powerful and very true. So paradigm is basically a way of thinking, a mindset, especially in an intellectual discipline. And then discourse is, I know your last textbook did in fact define that, that it's written or spoken communication or debate, a formal discussion or conversation, talking, dialogue, interacting basically. So discourse and paradigm are very important things I want you to take from this class. So back to the idea of who are the leaders. Let me give you that meaning again. Leadership equals thinking, and I'm going to put in parentheses paradigms and discourse. Now you have the definition for it. So thinking and actions that promote meaningful learning. The way we think and the way we act. Are we promoting learning? So, are you promoting meaningful learning? Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you are promoting meaningful learning. Every day, whether you do it at home, whether you do it in your classrooms, whether you do it here in the college classroom, whether you do it as a mentor, we promote meaningful learning. That's what we're all about. That's what educators do. And so, ta-da, you're a leader, tag. And so with that in mind, I want to show a video that's from TED. If you're not familiar with this website, you might want to spend a little time. It'll take a bit of time to navigate it. It's got a lot of powerful videos, teachings, and many different subjects. And I'm going to have my handy-dandy cameraman / editor do some fancy work, so he will edit this together. But the link I will put at the bottom of the course tools where I have, what is it called? I'm trying to remember the name of my course tool here. Website, oh God, Web Connections is what it's called. It's a little picture of a world globe. And if you click on it, you'll see I've been putting links in there all semester, including links to the videos. So my video lectures. So if you want to go back and see an old video lecture, you can through that. But this is TED.com, and I'm going to go ahead and let John do a fade into this video, and then we'll come back and finish this module.
How many of you are completely comfortable with calling yourselves a leader? See, I've asked that question all the way across the country, and everywhere I ask it, no matter where, there's always a huge portion of the audience that won't put up their hand. And I've come to realize that we have made leadership into something bigger than us. We made it into something beyond us. We made it about changing the world. And we've taken this title of leader and we treat it as if it's something that one day we're going to deserve. But to give it to ourselves right now means a level of arrogance or cockiness that we're not comfortable with. And I worry sometimes that we spend so much time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do that we've convinced ourselves that those are the only things we're celebrating. And we start to devalue the things that we can do every day. And we start to take moments where we truly are a leader and we don't let ourselves take credit for it and we don't let ourselves feel good about it. And I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years to work with some amazing people who have helped me redefine leadership in a way that I think has made me happier. And with my short time today, I just want to share with you the one story that is probably most responsible for that redefinition. I went to a school in a little school called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said, "I remember the first time that I met you." And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, "On my day before I started university, I was in the hotel room with my mom and my dad, and I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, 'Look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go to the first day, and if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we will take you home. We love you no matter what.'" And she says, so I went the next day, and I was standing in line getting ready for registration, and I looked around and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision, and as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the student union building wearing the stupidest hat I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shinorama, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shinorama. And all of a sudden, you got to me and you just stopped and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me and you smiled and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop and you held it out to him. And you said, you need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you. And she said, I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life. He turned beet red and he wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop. And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face and you looked at my mom and my dad and you said, look at that, look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger. And she said everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm gonna miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, you should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later. A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment, and I've searched my memory banks because that is funny, and I should remember doing it, and I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, you've been an incredibly important person in my life, was a moment that I didn't even remember. How many of you guys have a lollipop moment, a moment where someone said something or did something that you feel fundamentally made your life better? All right. How many of you have told that person they did it? See, why not? We celebrate birthdays where all you have to do is not die for 365 days. And yet we let people who have made our lives better walk around without knowing it. And every single one of you has been the catalyst for a lollipop moment. You have made someone's life better by something that you said or that you did. And if you think you haven't, think about all the hands that didn't go back up when I asked that question. You're just one of the people who hasn't been told. But it is so scary to think of ourselves as that powerful. It can be frightening to think that we can matter that much to other people. Because as long as we make leadership something bigger than us, as long as we keep leadership something beyond us, as long as we make it about changing the world, we give ourselves an excuse not to expect it every day from ourselves and from each other. Marianne Williamson said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us. And my call to action today is that we need to get over that. We need to get over our fear of how extraordinarily powerful we can be in each other's lives. We need to get over it so we can move beyond it. And our little brothers and our little sisters, and one day our kids, or our kids right now, can watch us start to value the impact we can have on each other's lives more than money and power and titles and influence. We need to redefine leadership as being about lollipop moments. How many of them we create, how many of them we acknowledge, how many of them we pay forward, and how many of them we say thank you for. Because we've made leadership about changing the world, and there is no world. There's only 6 billion understandings of it. And if you change one person's understanding of it, one person's understanding of what they're capable of, one person's understanding of how much people care about them, one person's understanding of how powerful an agent for change they can be in this world, you've changed the whole thing. And if we can understand leadership like that, I think if we can redefine leadership like that, I think we can change everything. And it's a simple idea, but I don't think it's a small one. And I want to thank you all so much for letting me share it with you today.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I really love it. It's one of my favorites. Thank you, Sylvia. They didn't use any last names. One of my students actually is the one who turned me on to that. She happens to be here in the room, so thank you. I didn't say it at the top of this video, but I have students in the classroom here with me that don't want to be on camera, but they can talk if they want to say something, and hopefully my microphone will pick it up. But it's easier to lecture when I have students in front of me, and these are students that are pretty familiar with my material and have come in here on their time off. to be a part of this, so thank you for being here. I'm going to pick up chapters 1 and 2, so that really just handled chapter 1 was the first part of this module, and I'm going to pick up on chapter 2, and I want to start with becoming a leader, thoughts on leadership, and I guess right around page 7, I believe. I don't have the textbook in front of me. I handed it back. Am I on 7? Good job, Laurie. Since the early 1930s, the idea of leadership has been linked with what's been called the industrial paradigm. There was that word paradigm again. I wasn't kidding. That shows up a lot throughout this textbook. And the industrial paradigm simply means that it's linear and bureaucratic. So decisions are made from the top and are passed down. You can already tell the idea of industry, industrial. I don't know, when I think of industrial, I think of like a factory that's making steel or cars, or right? Isn't that what you think of? And it's not a real personal, touchy-feely model, is it? No, you get the idea of assembly lines and maybe dangerous equipment and loud noises and earmuffs so that you don't hear the loud noises, right? We all have some kind of a picture of what industrial is. But the idea is that decisions are made from the top and then are passed down to the workers. You're going to put the whatever on the car at this point when it comes on the assembly line. I'm laughing because all of a sudden I have this picture in my mind of Lucy with the chocolate-covered cherries. She wasn't very good with her industrial model, was she? So that kind of an idea is what comes to my mind. And she got in trouble, too, because she didn't handle it very well. The manager came in and said, you got to speed it up. And then they kept coming faster and faster. And we don't fit into those perfect models as human beings. So then it's management-oriented, this industrial paradigm. It's about management, telling you what to do. It's usually linked to a single leader. There's somebody who's management, the boss, hire, fire. There might be bosses under the big boss, but the reality of it is, unless you're a manager, you don't have much power. It's achievement-oriented. How many chocolate-covered cherries can you wrap and get into the box? It's not enough. It's quantitative, meaning number data driven. So Lucy clearly wasn't getting her quantitative data was quite low. She didn't have enough chocolate-covered cherries, and actually neither did Ethel, huh? When I think about it, both of them, they didn't do so well. So that's the idea of the industrial model. And this concept was dominant until I would say right around the 60s, things began to change. And anybody who was around in the 60s know a lot of paradigms were being challenged. It was an interesting time in our country. And let's see, what do I want to say about that? And well, it was challenged in the 60s and 70s, and then really it began to change in the 80s. So the factory model in education is basically the industrial paradigm, but much like a factory, ECE programs are led by a CEO if they're operating under the factory model paradigm. And there's somebody who's in charge, that's the head person, the manager. And even if there's a board of directors, usually there's one person in charge, and there's a clear delineation between the boss and the subordinates. You know that phrase, subordinate? That's someone who's beneath you. And so basically you have your leaders, or a leader, and followers. And if you aren't following the way the leader wants you to, you're insubordinate and you get in trouble. So we have that model in college too, I have to say. Most of your college courses are set up, I'm the professor, you're the student, the power lies here, and you will jump through the hoops, right? I mean, I didn't set the system up, I just happened to notice it. I talked about the podium back in module either 3 or 4 in this class, and I did it on the video lecture. I remember saying, who set that podium up as the marker that keeps me from my students? And yet it's a really comfortable place to kind of lean, so I have to say, as much as I hate the podium, I find it easy to lean into it. But it does, it delineates power. It sends the message that I'm the one that you're going to listen to, and I'm the one in authority, and it keeps me away from you so that we don't interact. I mean, I have to jump over the tables to get to you right now. That's how the college classrooms are often set up. Sometimes in graduate school, we set them in roundtable discussion, and there's a reason why I had them put these kind of tables in this classroom that we can wheel, they collapse and wheel and move out of the way so that we can reconfigure this room, and we can sit in a circle if we want to. So when you're sitting in a circle, there's less of a power trip going on. You're more equal. And I guess there's a whole study in architecture about the strength of the circle, but I won't go there. So let's see, I talked about the podium, how it represents power. So program leaders are often trained apart from others. As a matter of fact, that was something I remember being told when I first started being a professor. I have mentors that help me step into the role of professor. And some of them are very progressive thinkers. And early on, I had some professors that were more traditional thinkers. And I was point blank told, whatever you do, don't ever take a class with your students. I said, really? How come? And they said, because the power line is obscured. I thought, oh. Now think about it. If we do trainings together, then that gives us equal footing. I'm going to be learning with you. We're learning together. There might be material I might not know, and so I'm not the all-powerful knowing one, which puts me more on equal footing. Just an interesting thought. Lines of power are obscured, and that makes it harder to be the manager, the iron fist manager that is all-knowing and powerful. Does that make sense? So when we separate leaders in training, we're perpetuating that industrial paradigm model of leadership, and we're prohibiting the more collaborative, collegial, shared leadership model. We stop it in its tracks. Because if we're not equal and we're not reciprocal, meaning it goes both direction, then we're not colleagues. I'm up here and you're down there. And I'm not trying to make any college professors wrong. It's kind of how the system has been set up for a long, long time. I'm just saying that perhaps it's time we look at a different model. What would happen if I sat in a circle with my students? Would that just destroy my ability to get voice where I need it? Maybe in some situations it might, but I don't think so. I really don't. Yeah. I think it's just something to think about. Yeah, and honestly, I think I learn more from you than you learn from me, and I am totally open to that. I'm going to talk about experience as a form of knowledge in a little bit. Actually, that's next module. So if we separate leaders from the training, we're perpetuating this idea that there's a manager and then there's people who follow that person. There's hierarchy. We prohibit the building of more collaborative infrastructure. What else happens? What else do we do when the person is separated, the leadership is separated from the people they work with? And what else happens? Can you think of anything else that might happen? Communication breaks down. Yeah, how can you communicate if you're not even in the same room, right? Exactly. Excellent, thank you, Mary. You can't build relationship. Right, you have to connect with people to build relationship, huh? Yeah, that's great. Excellent examples. Thank you for being brave and putting your voices on camera. Thank you, Chris. I'm using first names only. They don't know who you are, so. I got to watch it. My sense of humor is if you want their addresses and phone number. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I have an odd sense of humor. All right. So this top-down bureaucratic nature of, or paradigm extends itself to classroom, and it affects teaching. It affects learning. It affects everybody, even in the early childhood setting. It's pervasive. And I know that you understand. Those of you who have ever had a boss that was a dominating person, it is really difficult. It's suffocating. And it doesn't bring out your best. And it doesn't give you room to shine and be an expert in an area. Oh, this isn't in my lecture notes. Whenever I put down the lecture notes, I'm in trouble. But I have to say, I think of this little guy who once was in my classroom, and he had to be about 3 or 4, But he wanted to talk about horses. And I don't know anything about horses, really. I know how to get on them, and even then, I'm not a horse person. My niece is, yay, and I made sure that she learned everything she wanted to know about horses. I don't dislike them, I just don't know them. I don't own one, so I'm not a horse knowledgeable person. I know Jack Russell Terriers, but not horses. So in the classroom, we were reading a story about horses, and he said, oh, and he gave this information about, well, if we didn't have the fences, it could scare the horses, and fences are a way of keeping them safe and protected. Even if the fences are kind of flimsy, it still gives them the notion of protection, and they like that. And he went on and on and on, and in the old model, I would have had to stop him and say, no, 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 I'm teaching the story. Shh, crisscross applesauce. All eyes on me. You've heard that? I hate that. I have to say, I absolutely hate that. But in the old days, I would have said something like, well, I'm telling the story, and I need you to wait until I'm finished. But I have changed my way of teaching, and I could stop, and I could say, really, you know a lot about horses. Tell us. He could be the expert in the moment, because I didn't know anything about horses, and he knew it. They all knew it. It was clear. I don't know. You feed them hay. I know that. You pet them. You brush them. Good horsey. I mean, he spent a good 10 minutes. I gave him room and space for the 3-year-old to be the knowledgeable source. Did I lose my power as the teacher? No. No, not at all. Did they have a learning, I would say, a collaborative learning approach that day? Yeah. And then it turned out there were a couple other children who knew a little bit about horses. Clearly, I was not the expert. And if we can back down and give other students, the ability to step in and be the expert, what could happen? The knowledge that we could come into. All right, I'm picking up my lecture notes. I forgot to look at the clock too, so I don't know what this means. Let's see, the top-down bureaucratic nature of this paradigm. Okay, so what happens when we're under this type of industrial paradigm is employees can feel like there's strict rules that are set for them that they don't have choice. It's limiting. Like how things should be carried out, when they should be carried out. We use the term micromanaged. Have you heard that term before? Meaning someone's telling you exactly what to do and when. And we all know that brings out the best in our performance, right? It doesn't. They can start to feel like they're simply there to carry out someone else's mandates. The teachers don't feel as valuable. They start to feel less than. And the minute we start to make people feel less valuable and less important, you're not going to get their top performance. Just by nature, you can't give it all because your all isn't being accepted or appreciated. They may view their job as one of being told what to do and no room for creativity. And the minute we stop creativity from, let's see, Module 6, was it Module 6? Yeah, we talked about innovation and creativity last week in Module 6. The minute we stop that, then we're no longer able to grow. We have to encourage creativity. That was chapters 9 and 10 of Module 6. I think that's a powerful idea that we have to encourage creativity. It's the antithesis of this industrial paradigm because there's no room for creativity when you're putting the chocolates in the box. They want it just so, how many chocolates per box, it needs to be wrapped a certain way, and that when we work with children, there has to be a creativity. So organizations functioning in the industrial paradigms, they basically exist to attain certain goals. All structures and systems are prearranged to meet those goals. I'm a big fan of goals. Matter of fact, Module 6, last module, I talked about goal setting. It's not like I'm anti-goals. Goals are great. But you want to have input in those goals. You want to be a part of the team that sets them. Supervisors focus on paperwork and accountability. And again, I'm not anti-accountability. I'm not crazy about paperwork, but we got to do what we got to do. But accountability is a good thing, unless it's being the motivating factor to get you to work. There should be some room for creativity. Teachers move children through the day as though they are cars on the assembly line. Do you ever feel like that when you're working with children? It's time. Some of you are shaking your head no. Some of you are going, yeah, it's happened. They're not cars. This is not an assembly line. We're dealing with people. And as we started off this semester saying, it is hard to just determine how efficient we are in what we do because we're dealing with people. It's not the same as creating 100 widgets in an hour. It's just very, very different. Our quality is measured in a different way. So the other problem with that type of paradigm is that the leader's effectiveness is judged in terms of whether or not they meet goals. There's so much more to it than that. Do we get even a part of that goal? So if it's a yes or no, yes, you got the goal, or no, you didn't, then it doesn't take into account the fact that there are phases of goals. So maybe that child didn't meet the goal that we had for them that day, but they've come a long way, rather. So let's see, one more point here. The program evaluation seen as solely the director's responsibility, as exclusive of the teachers. Oh, the program should be evaluated by everybody, including parents. So the staff should be evaluating program, the managers. You can ask the children, how do you like your school? Oh, we're afraid to do that because the children don't know what school should look like. Yeah, they do. They should have input.
It's made for them.
And as teachers, it is made for them. I like Lisa Murphy's quote, this is a child's place and we move at a child's pace. We got to learn to slow down. They are not cars on the assembly line. We've got to give them some time to interact. All right, where else do I want to go here? Can I ask you how much time, John?
17:50.
Oh, I'm in a good place, although we still have that 10-minute video in the middle there, so
You actually have 10 minutes to 10-minute video and then 17:50.
Cool, thank you.
So the industrial paradigm is director evaluated?
Right.
Okay.
Usually you might have a board member come in and do the evaluations, but it's that top-down model. The one person is telling everybody else what to do. And if only one person is evaluating it, then that doesn't give you any input. Things will never change according to what the staff may want. And I see some heads nodding. We should all be evaluating our programs. And to be honest with you, even my program here at the college, I sought out student evaluation was it last semester? Yeah, it was last semester. We had a program review, and I did it on Facebook, so maybe it wasn't the best way to do it because not everybody is on Facebook, but I had a lot of input that was helpful. We looked at hours and schedules and what time of the, are we meeting the needs in terms of technology? I take that stuff seriously. You should have the ability to evaluate your own program. This is your program. I say this in many of my classes, that this ECE program is your program and it is all about you. I'm here for you and to support you. The minute it becomes the Dr. Daly top-down method, I got to get out of here. I don't work well that way, and I have this thought that maybe nobody does. So the factory model in the age of quality. The deal is that we are starting to look at quality. We want to be programs of quality, and the factory model isn't fitting. This industrial paradigm is not fitting for young children. It is not fitting for us, and we have to look towards quality. A program where meaningful learning takes place. So many schools still look a lot like factories, and the problem is, even those that want to change are not sure what quality looks like. There's a debate. What is quality? That's hard to put our finger on, isn't it? What does and what doesn't work with children? How are we going to evaluate it? How do we measure it? How do we even know if we have productivity? Are we increasing productivity? Should we measure? There's a big heated discussion now in terms of children's evaluations and assessments. a real heated debate on, are we even using the right tools to evaluate and assess children? Should we even be doing that in early childhood? I mean, there's a lot of discourse, hey, there's that word again, about what should we be doing? How do we make quality programs? So working with children is not like building a car, and each child is unique. And quality ECE depends on a multiple variety or multiple variables. We're the antithesis of the factory model, or we should be. The minute we start cranking them out like little cars on the assembly line, we got to watch it. And it's not people-centered. I'm always worried about that factory model when I see a curriculum that uses the teacher-proof curriculum in a box. Do you know what I'm talking about? I bet you do. Where nobody gets to have input on the curriculum. It's given by some publisher somewhere. It's laminated. It's in stone, and you're going to do this curriculum at this time. That sends the message that as teachers, you don't know what the children need to learn. It doesn't feel good, huh? At first I liked it to just get ideas. I'm not anti-curriculum in the box if you use it in the right way, to go gleaning for ideas that you then become creative with and turn into what your children are interested in. But a lot of time these factory models use the curriculum in the box. That's not the only way to know if that's what's going on, but that is one. That's one main way. And you know what happens is those teachers start to feel isolated. They, again, are feeling like they're being told what to teach and how to teach it, that they're not valued as knowledgeable educators that can figure out what children want to learn. It can turn them into dissatisfied employees. And of course, then we've got the turnover rate in early childhood ed that's quite high. I call it the revolving door. Maybe you know what I'm talking about, meaning students come in, which is good for me as a professor because then I train them up in the classroom and my classrooms are pretty full, and yay, that looks good because good numbers mean productivity. Maybe, not really, and I know that you know that's not true because the smaller the class, usually the more intimate and the more material I'm able to cover. So, but no, that's not how it's usually looked at. It's numbers. There's a quantitative thing going on. And so the classrooms get full, I train them up, they go out into the field, they teach, they realize that they're not making that much money, and they either go on and get their bachelor's and go teach K through 12, or they get out, and some people in our area, we have casinos that pay about twice that which our preschool teachers are making, which grieves me. Not that the casino workers shouldn't get good money. I'm sure blackjack is a difficult thing. I'm not saying that. I've never dealt blackjack, but I can see where that would have skill. You've got to know how to shuffle, and I don't know how to do that. But the truth is, we should be paid a comparable wage too. But because that isn't happening, and if you're especially not feeling valued in your job, you're not given creative license to teach what you know those children need, because you know the children in your classroom, then you're going to leave. And there's the revolving door. And then I have more students come in and I teach them, I send them out, they get dissatisfied, they leave. More students come in and I teach them and they send them out and they get dissatisfied. And do you see what I mean? And if we really go back to the attachment model of Bowlby, hey, I brought it full circle, that's not healthy for children. They need to have attachment relationships that are secure, even in the classroom with their teachers. They shouldn't have a revolving door of, well, who's the teacher today? Who was the teacher yesterday? Who are you? They should know their teachers. Their teachers should know the children in their care. And then we build this solid foundation of attachment, where then, as Erickson would say, we have trust versus mistrust. Children learn to trust. They don't waste their energy getting to know each new person either. Anytime you're getting to know somebody new, it takes energy. It takes thought. It's like, well, is this person, are they kidding? Are they serious? I got to kind of figure it out. And so we have to spend a little time getting to know somebody. Children are the same way with their teachers. If they don't know, is this person going to touch me in a way that's, I got to brace myself, or is this person going to be gentle? And a lot of energy is wasted just trying to figure out the new teacher, as opposed to learning the things that are more developmentally appropriate. Okay, so just dissatisfaction turns to personnel turnover. And actually, that's not only the attachment issue, but then there's poor student results because they're wasting so much time trying to figure out the new people coming in and getting used to everything new. Novelty takes brain power. So they're not able to spend it on things that are more important, and so we have poor student results. And guess what? Ultimately, that ends up in lack of student interest. Those curriculum in the boxes are fine if the children are interested in them. But what happens if they're not into it? And, oh well, that's what we're doing. It's on the page. Today is the day. We're doing that. I've seen that before. I remember I was teaching, and I was actually watching another teacher teach, and I saw this. We were in circle time, and there was a group of about 15 children in circle, and into the classroom, we had the door open. It was a lovely spring day, and they had the doors open, and in flies this butterfly. Now, the crisscross applesauce isn't going to happen when a butterfly flies into the room. And this was a new teacher who was going to stick to the rules here. I've got this curriculum, we're going to do it. And the children were like, ah! They got up, they ran, all 15 of them. Maybe there were a couple that didn't. And only because they were tripping over their shoelace trying to figure out how to get up and get going. They ran to the butterfly. So are we going to stick with, no. And she actually tried to get the children to come back to the circle. She did, bless her heart, because I got to get the pages, we got to do this. And today is the day we're doing, I don't even remember what she was doing. I don't have a clue what she was doing. I don't remember. I'm sure they don't remember. Not that it was a bad teaching, it just wasn't where they were at. We have a butterfly in the classroom right now. That's where we should be. And then I will turn that butterfly into the things that I want to teach. If we're supposed to be doing literacy skills, can we teach literacy skills while that butterfly's in the room? Yeah, we sure can. Now I'm going to talk about social emotional because we don't want to trample each other when we go run to see the butterfly. So now I've got to turn a chaotic situation into, oh, let's come and sit here and watch the butterfly. And I'm going to see if we can see him there. Let's sit and watch him. And we can turn it into a social emotional interaction. We don't want to scare the butterfly. And if all 15 of us try to grab him, we could hurt him. Gentle hands, that's social emotional. We could tell stories about butterflies. Am I going to break out that Hungry Caterpillar book? Yes, of course I am. And I will break out the flannel board story too so that they can then tell the story. And then we've got sequencing, which is cognitive skill. I mean, we could write stories about butterfly. There's literacy. We could draw. There's fine motor. We can go become butterflies out there in the playground. There's our gross motor. Hey, it might turn into a whole unit or project on butterflies. The life cycle, well, how did the caterpillar, or chrysalis, right? Yes, chrysalis, I brush up on this stuff before I teach it with the children. But then we would look at the chrysalis and how the metamorphosis occurs, and wow, that's a big word. Talk about vocabulary, chrysalis, metamorphosis, right? So you get my point. My concern is that when we don't trust our teachers to teach and we make them do the curriculum in the box, that we can't look for the teachable moment. That's the problem with the preset script. The teachable moment. How do you know when that's there? I don't know. It depends. That's my favorite answer. It does depend. And what's teachable for one child might not be the same moment for another. But all I know is you have to be open to it so that when it happens, you can step in and scaffold that learning. So we don't want to have verbatim teaching from a curriculum box. We don't want to have the correct answer told to us. We want to be co-learners. I want to learn about the chrysalis. I don't remember. Are you kidding? It's been so long since I've taught that. I need to brush up on it myself. So now I'm a co-learner. So let's read, let's investigate together. Oh, look, that's right. It's not a cocoon. That's a moth. It's a chrysalis. There's a difference. I can learn at the same time. No one has to tell me the correct answer so that I'm the all-knowing teacher. Because what happens is that children get disinterested. By the time she got them back to circle, which she did, she strong-armed them, not really, but I mean, she's coerced them back. I will bribe you. You won't have recess. You'll be here forever. till you're 18 unless you come and sit and do circle right now. She got them back, but they were disinterested and they were very disengaged. They had lost interest because now the phenomena of something amazing and beautiful in the classroom wasn't being honored. And so you lose wonder. There's a loss of wonder, a loss of curiosity, a loss of the motivation to learn. The antithesis of what we want to do, right? All right, let me say a couple more things and I'll wrap it up. I talked about the social reform in the 1960s and 70s, and that really in the 80s, things began to change in terms of how we looked at leadership. And definitions of leadership are so oversimplified. I'm kind of going back to the definition of leadership. One who leads. Okay, that's not so helpful, is it? So here's a couple other of these old paradigm definitions. The position or office of a leader. Okay. The capacity or ability to lead. A group of leaders. And these definitions suggest that leadership only resides with a leader. That person who's a manager, supervisor, mentor. And it fails to take into consideration the relationship among leaders and the people they're leading. That reciprocity. There, that comes back in again. Definitions do matter. It sets the stage for how we think of things. It sets the paradigm, how we wrap our minds around something. And so they began to look at redefining the word leadership in the 80s, and new paradigms result when definitions are closely examined and clearly defined. And so they began to redefine it. We're still defining it. And research and scholars, they're still working on a process of redefining it. I like Linda Lampert. She's in your text on page 11 and a bit on page 14. And in her book, Building Leadership Capacity in Schools, that was in 1998, she began looking at definitions of leadership. And it should be about influence, not coercion. We're not coercing anybody into anything. And transformation. You'll hear the words transformational leadership, meaning we're transforming something. Kind of like the chrysalis, the little caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That's transformational. So she said that school leadership needs to be considered as a broad concept separate from the presumed role of a leader. So leadership isn't about one person. It needs to be broader than that. It needs to be embedded in the community of the school. So that suggests that there's shared properties to leadership, that there are more than one leaders. More than one leaders. Yeah, there are multiple leaders. There we go. That's a little better English. And that leadership is about learning together, constructing meaning, and collectively and collaborating to build knowledge. That's powerful stuff. I mean, just read that out. If you don't stop and think about it, it might just go over your head without it soaking in. But we're learning together, co-learners, co-constructors of our knowledge. That's powerful. That changes everything. And it's so simple, and it's easy to go, oh, yeah, so what? That's not how it was done in the days. I tell you what to think, and you will think it. The Freire banking system, that's not in my notes, but Paulo Freire was a philosopher who used to say that the way schools were set up was like a banking system, that you are the bank like a bank deposit account, and that I deposit into the account, knowledge, and that at any point I have the right to demand a withdrawal, and that's what a quiz is. So I deposit the knowledge, I lecture, blah, 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 here I go, I know how to lecture. And then at any moment, it's like quiz, pop quiz, and I withdraw, I make my withdrawal from the account. And he said, that's crazy. Why is it that people are not savings deposit accounts and that the banking system isn't working? That's not in your text. This is a different, this is just something I know. And
I'm trying to read the whole thing here about the definition.
Oh, good. She's looking at me going, but that's not in the text. You're right, it's not in the text, but it does apply to this. So Freire was a transformational thinker, progressive, and just said, why do we do schools this way? Do we have that right? No, not if you're co-learners. If you're co-learners, then we're investigating perceptions and values together. And that means we have conversations, continuing conversations. We're constructing knowledge together. It doesn't mean that I come in with the knowledge and then put it on you, like I kind of am with this videotape. It's hard to construct knowledge through a videotape because I guess if it was a webinar, then you could text me and I could respond to it. Or it's a little awkward setting for that. A roundtable discussion is the better way to construct knowledge because then we can have an open discourse. What else do I want to say? Actions are created that grow out of these new understandings. So if I take the time to communicate and learn with you and interact with you, reciprocity, relationship, reflection, because then I have to reflect and go, wow, is the way I always thought of it the real, is that right, or is there another way to do it? So that causes grappling and I guess malleable thinking. You have to manipulate it and change it. I impact you, you impact me. It's powerful. So we become co-creators, co-constructors of knowledge. Everybody's involved in the construction of knowledge, including your children. Lambert's ideas contradict that industrial paradigm and are informed by constructivist philosophy of knowledge and learning. The constructivist theory. I love it. Did I hit my microphone? I think I did. Sorry about that. Blew his ears out. Wah! I'll get my hair here too. The constructivist approach. I just love the constructivist approach. I went to Mills College, which is a constructivist college. It was so wonderful because they would give us the assignments, and then you could come back and say, yeah, I want to do this one instead, and this is why, because of this, this, and that. And they'd say, great, do it. How can I support you? How cool is that? I'd like to try to think I can do that in my classes too. It's a little easier face to face. So the constructivist theory often is seen in the high scope classroom, Reggio Emilia. Of course, Montessori has a bit of a constructivist approach too. And I can't say constructionist without saying Vygotsky, Lev Vygotsky. And see, I'm on camera, so I'll refrain from saying how much I absolutely adore that man. He's dead and has been for a while, but golly, his writings are phenomenal. Or the translated writings, because he wrote in Russian and then it was translated into English, but brilliant thinker. So the constructivist philosophy emphasizes the importance of students and teachers co-constructing knowledge rather than passively receiving it like the banking system or the banking approach. It stresses the understanding and the application of knowledge. The so what, now what? Here's the information. Now, if you don't apply it, then it's meaningless. It is based on the active processes and thinking and analyzing. So it's not blind obedience. We call that theory to practice. Blind obedience doesn't require a lot of analyzing. Just go do it because I said so. I could hear my mom. I'm sure every mother on the planet said that at least once in their life, though, because I said so, because they get tired of us when we, why, I don't want to. So leadership from a constructivist position is not about control. It is not about power. It is not about status. It's not about position. It's none of those things. It's not tied to roles and responsibility. That's a really different mindset. Leadership is about teachers and students and administrators and parents and communities co-constructing their knowledge. All together as a community. That could get a little messy, by the way, because we don't all agree with it. It's so much easier to say, I said so, now go do it. It doesn't require so much from you. It doesn't require a lot of thinking and analyzing and action and reflection and all of that stuff that takes energy. but makes things rich. Leadership is about understanding and the application of knowledge. It's about the active processes that involve thinking and analyzing. It's about practice and application, or as I in graduate school learned, it's from theory to practice. We take those theories that we learn about in school and then we put them into practice. It's easy to learn about theory. It's another story to, in fact, do it in the classroom with the textbook closed and 15 little children running around. Ah. Leadership is seen as the quality of organizations, and it can be exerted by anybody within the organization. We all have the ability to lead, including the 3-year-old who was the expert on horses. This brings me back to ECE 3, where I talk about the constructivist approach in Vygotsky. That's a different class than this one, but I refer to ECE 3 over and over and over again in all my classes. It's a foundational course. That's child growth and development, one of my favorite classes. In that textbook, it talks about, that one is, the one I use is John Santrock's Children. It's one of those big, heavy $200 guys, but you'll use it for the rest of your life. I still have mine from 30 years ago. I have my human development, child development book. So he said that there were 3 things that you could see in a constructivist classroom. One is that I bet some of you even remember, but I won't put you on the spot. I can sound them going, yeah, thank goodness, it's been a while. It was on the midterm in my face-to-face class. It needs to be social. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. Reciprocity and relationship. It goes into both of them. Can you see how well connected that is? You can't be social without relationship and reciprocity. It has to be meaningful, meaning the children have to be able to make sense out of it in their life today. And I think that means reflective. I mean, going back to the 3 R's of this text, we've got relationship and reciprocity, and I'm thinking that when something's meaningful, it's reflective. And it's actually about relationship too, because I can't make something meaningful if I don't know who you are and what your life is about. There's nothing worse than being given a bunch of information that you can't connect concretely to your life today. Maybe I just did that today. Hopefully you'll make concrete connections to your life today. I hate it when I do that. I try not to. I really try to make it concrete for you. So it needs to be 1, social, 2, meaningful, and then 3, scaffolded. If you remember the zone of proximal development, that it doesn't mean that the all-knowing teacher does the scaffolding. Anybody with knowledge or anything with knowledge, including the internet and textbooks and encyclopedias and 3-year-olds who know about horses and the community. I think if we were really going to do a theme on horses, I live out here in a rural area. There are horses all over, and there are people who are quite knowledgeable. I would drag in some of these people who know about horses to talk about it. So, and by the way, those 3 things, social, meaningful, and scaffolding, it isn't like 1, 2, and 3. You could put them in any one order, but it is 3 things, and that's the order I happen to put them in. And I think it does fit with the textbook that we're looking at. Okay, there you go. I've got 2 quotes I want to share with you before we call it a day. One is Warren Bennis, and I quoted from him in ECE 2A at one point, so some of you sitting in here have already heard some quotes about leadership from this guy. I actually lectured on him in one of my other classes. He says, becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It's precisely that simple. It's also that difficult. And then Parker Palmer says, we teach who we are. So if we're going to teach, we have to know who we are. And knowing oneself is an ongoing journey, and so is developing leadership capacity. The idea that leadership is a skill you either have or don't have is ridiculous. It's just a matter of where we're all leaders in some way or form. It's just a matter of where we are in growing in our leadership capacities. It's not a skill you have or you don't have. You're all leaders. Some of us are stronger in certain areas than others. We have certain giftings, but you're all leaders. So I'm going to end on that note, and that's the end of Module 7. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.